Sure. Look, you don't.
It's more professional to do
Just a
this.
second.
Make sure Kathy's got the recorder. I could use this at my desk at work, like,
You need one.
yeah.
Smash
I
a
have
few things.
bats at my job at work, so I don't need those.
Yeah, what?
Bats.
You need room.
Bats.
That's a level.
All right, we're gonna call this Development Committee meeting to order. Kathy, would you please take the roll?
Yes. Carter,
Here.
Walther,
Here.
Hayes. Here.
If you stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Thank you for putting the agenda together, VJ. If you want to go ahead and start off,
I will. If I can just mention real quick, I'm going to go ahead and cover number 4. And then in my stack, I forgot to bring something down, so I'll have to run upstairs and we'll jump to number 6 while I do that. So
Okay.
the first thing I want to talk about, I handed out to each of you on your desk, there's a color map that's shaded in regards to an idea or a proposal that we've been presented with from a potential developer for a project that would be up off of Dixon Road. It's south of Morris Road, north of Havens Corners Road. What this is a development that would ultimately lead to an annexation into the city. It is in Franklin County. This project would result in 140 acres roughly of open park space. It built out 720 some homes, 722 homes. This would be in the Gahanna School District. It would be serviced by Jefferson Water and would be serviced by Jefferson Fire. So the services on the stress on city services is pretty minimal. They would like to build, the 722 houses in the price point of about $300,000 for this. So it's a little higher than we've seen. It would be our first step into Franklin County, which there would be some coordination with the police as far as writing tickets and getting to the Franklin County courts. Aside from that, the only stress on this would be plowing and maintaining the roads in here. So it's not on the our local school districts. We would have police service, we would have road service, but nothing from water and sewer, nothing from additional stress on the school districts. I'll be the first to admit I know nothing about the Gahanna school districts or what their stress level is as far as students. We've talked to these folks and asked them to talk to them. The other question right now is the capacity from the Jefferson Water and Sewer District. If this can be serviced, if so, where from, and is there the capacity to do it? The second page of this is potential or projected income taxes that could be collected from this development. If you look at this, starting year 2019 is when they would start building, and they anticipate having 150 units built at that point. They're looking at a payroll of about $100,000 per unit. So we're looking at $150,000 in income tax collection. At build out 2027 with 722 units, looking about we are looking at $722,000 in income tax collections with a very small stress on our services as we see it right now. So there is a tremendous amount or a significant amount of income tax that could be collected with this development. The other standpoint to this is that they would like to initiate a non-school TIF, so the schools would remain whole for this. They would like to do the TIF in order to do some of the public improvements that would be needed. Specifically, if you look at the map on the first page, there's a dotted line that goes through the area that says 2640 feet. That would be the extension of Graham Road. There may need to be some additions done to Dixon Road that would be paid for with the TIF, potentially funding some of the infrastructure improvements within the subdivision with the TIF. However, if you look at the big long page of this, when you start looking at the TIF revenue that could be collected, the annual TIF pilots that would be paid out, we're looking at about $40 million that would be paid out during the 30-year TIF. The build-out for this would be 2029, where we'd start seeing that full collection on this.
27.
Or 2027, I'm sorry, where we'd see the full build-out on this. Reason I wanted to bring this up is, first of all, just to see if there's any concerns, see what the appetite is of the committee. We do anticipate that the gentlemen who are pursuing this would attend a future development committee meeting once they complete their due diligence on this, as far as talking to the schools and also looking at the capacities for the utilities. But, this would be our first step into Franklin County. We'd start we'd start straddling boundaries of the counties, which, some of our neighbors have done. I don't know if this will lead to additional requests for such a thing. The purpose for the annexation is, be quite frank, is the density that they'd like to pursue. Jefferson Township's very firm on their density, and this property, if built at that density, is just not going to be financially feasible for development. So I wanted to bring it up, let the committee get up to speed on it, get any additional feedback that there may be, if there's any concerns, any feedback that I could share with these gentlemen as they continue to pursue this opportunity.
BJ, I'm just trying to get a mental picture of where it's at. Is it on the west side of Dixon?
It is. You know where McGowan is?
Yes.
Just north of McGowan.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's on the west side.
On the west side, towards that. Okay.
What they're looking at, if you look at the dotted line that goes through this, it's going from Graham Road down to McGowan. So that'd be the main thoroughfare through the development.
I see.
Yeah. They are committed to doing the green area that you see is all going to be parkland or open space, 140 acres of additional park space.
You guys have any questions about it?
I do, but it's not gonna be a very intelligent question. It's a Suzanne question. Okay, the additional park space, and that would be Tasco Parks, correct? And this is new park space.
It is.
Mike.
I'd do that on purpose. So additional park space that we would be responsible for maintaining. So I'm just
Potentially.
curious.
Yeah, potentially. We also talked to them about forming an HOA that would be responsible for maintaining the park space.
And the only reason why I'm asking questions, because I know we've been talking a lot about potential park levies, monies, how to maintain them. And so, I mean, I'm just categorizing it that we're adding more park space, and that this is our responsibility. Is that correct? Okay, just checking.
Go ahead.
BJ, do you know if the TIF funds are they tied to anything? Do they have to be used for anything?
We haven't gotten that far yet. The TIF funds could potentially be used for the park improvements, could be used for Dixon Road improvements, could be used for any of that, but that would all be written in the TIF legislation once it's identified what it would be for.
Okay.
When do you expect for us to hear anything more about this? Like, what's the time?
I would say mid-December, early January.
Okay. Outstanding. You want to jump to number 6?
Yes, and I'll be right back.
All right, Scott. I'm sorry. Review and update on planning and zoning department projects.
Yes, and I passed out a form that tops the development committee and talks about major projects update. And through a call in March 16, the planning and zoning department put together a list of some of the major projects that we were looking to accomplish, which was tied to the need to provide additional help to the city planner. So going through the list, there's a few. Everything on the list has been started in one way, shape, or form. So everything is in motion.
Okay.
Some are further along than others. Transportation Corridor Overlay District, it has been updated. It was updated in 16, but it essentially, the way it was updated to serve as a Band-Aid, so to speak, until the commercial corridor plan could be implemented. So it removed some of the requirements for large setbacks and things of that nature that kind of contribute to like a suburban sprawl type development. and allows the Planning and Zoning Commission to waive those requirements for setbacks, parking, et cetera, without having to go through the variance process. So that has been tweaked, but it needs to be further tweaked once the commercial corridor plan has been created. Also, in the general zoning code updates, we have completed decks, patios, porches, and balconies, as you all know. And in the process where we are currently crafting regulations, we have demolitions and signs. And then on the second page, currently identified to-dos. That's where the list always seems to get longer and longer and longer, which is good and bad because Zach, as he's gone through the zoning code, has been able to identify a lot of shortcomings, which is good that we identify them, but that now that portion of the list continues to get longer and longer. Also, the zoning map, Zach has considerable GIS experience, so it's been very helpful to have him on board to look at the zoning map, identify issues. Every time we think we got it, we find a parcel on the map that there's an issue with. We found one just on Friday, for example. So Zach has corrected that, and hopefully by the December 5th council meeting, we plan on submitting a accurate, to the best of our knowledge, zoning map to council for review. The one thing that, since this was, we've kind of established this list in March. In February, if you recall, Alan was hired as our public service director, who has an engineering background. So Alan has been very instrumental when working with the development or the planning and zoning department as we pursue subdivisions. As we've worked together, we've noticed with our subdivision regulations, while it was on the list that we needed to address those, there's a lot of holes in there and a lot of confusion, things that are addressed that don't need to be addressed, things that aren't addressed that should be addressed, the process of how things work, that in speaking with him, we've kind of drafted a framework, so to speak. I would like to move forward and start to put that into a form that we could codify or something that we could add to the code, because as old plans are dusted off, some of these that we're seeing plans that are been dusted off, they're 10, 15 years old that we're updating, or new subdivisions are going in. I think it would be very important to have a subdivision process that's streamlined, easy to understand, but with it being streamlined and easy to understand, that's both on our side and on the developer side, that we have an agreed upon process on how we go through things and how things are to be done. So with those, I think I'd hate to see more subdivisions come without having something, a set of regulations in place that, oh, we missed this one, but that was a 300 lot subdivision. We'll get them next time. I'd hate to see us go down that road and then we're stuck with potentially, 300 lot subdivisions that weren't done at the best they could be. And we're working together to kind of fill in those gaps, and I think we're doing a good job with that. I would just like to see something more official. So that, after working with Alan, I think that for me would be the one that kind of floats to the top due to the number of residential development requests that we're getting. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Scott, now that you have a little bit of relief in your office, is there any way that we could get a timeline on the projects on the sheet, so we can kind of see, when an overall time of when you could possibly have it completed? And I'm certainly not asking for rainbows, maybe a unicorn, but and then kind of stages along the way, if you will, where we can kind of see how it's going.
Yeah, like a batting order. We're doing
Yeah.
this first. This should take this, and then I could do that.
What I would like to do is be able to lay out a calendar or schedule for 2017 when this stuff could be done. Start taking a look at it, prioritizing, and also looking at timeframes. And not only 2017, but starting now. The rest of 2016, granted, it's going to be choppy with holidays and everything, but looking, laying out what we can do in 2017 and get done.
I find that if we put a timeline on things, they tend to be more seriously taken, or not seriously, but there's a lot of attention paid if you have the timeline.
Right, I went back and dug up the stuff from March, and, you know, one of the comments that I think we all had was, well, we need to organize these in priorities. It sounds like you're hitting a few of them. Some of them aren't getting as much attention as others, I would assume. Maybe hitting the low-hanging fruit first, which is not a bad idea. And I agree with you 100% on the subdivision issues. If we have subdivisions coming in, we certainly want to know what issues we're looking at with the regulations. One thing I didn't hear you talk about was the comprehensive plan. As it being one of the longest durations that you had mentioned in March, I'm concerned that we haven't maybe started that one 100% yet with different zonings that have occurred maybe in Etna Township down on 70 and 310, where they had to go back and basically rewrite the screening and the setbacks from their plans that they had originally had for that zoning. I think it's important that we look at the comprehensive plan. And with that, I just wanted to add one more thing. I know Ann had put in a public records request a few months ago about the comprehensive plan. And I know your answer back was, we don't have any of that, essentially. Well, we do. I do. I have it. I went back through the boxes and boxes and boxes of stuff that I have. So the old drafts, the old Lima Township stuff that came out of the firehouse, we have all that. I think Kathy worked with Ann a little bit with some other stuff that's in here. And I want to get you copies of that because it's really important. I don't know how you can go back through a comprehensive plan without knowing where this comprehensive plan came from. I mean, that's a huge importance. And that we don't have it, I spent, and Ann spent, I don't know, 20 hours going through boxes of stuff trying to find this stuff. And I don't know why the city doesn't have it. It's mind-boggling to me.
Go ahead.
And I agree totally, and I think the one that we have, there was a lot of involvement from volunteers from Ohio State, I think.
Oh, the list is unbelievable.
Yeah,
Who
and so
got
it wasn't
So
it
I have
wasn't
to
a
bring-
directed effort
I
to
brought
get
the
to this.
2002 comprehensive
Ah.
plan, the 2006 with me. I have a stack that's probably 4 feet tall of the documents that she had asked for that you guys don't have.
And honestly, I don't know why
Yeah.
we don't have them. I looked through every
Well,
box and
I-
everything we have. There was nothing in there.
So one thing I wanted to make sure that we had on this list of things of the zoning in the development world of planning and zoning is that we have some way of scanning that stuff in, getting retention of it. I mean, I'll give you copies of everything I have.
Please do.
I would like them back, but that stuff, and where you can see where the draft started and where it was amended, where the trails, for instance, were just deleted solely 100% from the comprehensive plan. Why did that happen? Nobody knows, but it was on the draft. So anyhow, there's a lot of examples of that. Why the comprehensive plan was passed with 500-foot setbacks, and then all of a sudden it was 100-foot setbacks or 125-foot setbacks. There's no discussion. It just happened. And I happen to know, well, anyhow. So we'll leave it at that. But you have to know where it came from, in my opinion, to know how to go back through it. And, I mean, an example is Etna Township took their, I think it was 50-foot setbacks and changed them to 300-foot or 250-foot or something. I mean, they did a tremendous setback requirement on a development on 70 and 310. Well, that's important. And that's important to know that that's a rural aspect of development out here. So anyhow, I'm sure you're aware of all that. I just wanted to mention that seems to be, as we're developing business parks and other developments are occurring, comprehensive plan would seem to be at the top of my list, at least, for reviewing and amending and updating, essentially. And it's going to take the longest time. You've got some time frames in here. They're like, well, at 25%, you were 720 days. At it was going to take a long, long time to do this. 2 years at 25% of your time. It's a long time. And I'm hoping we can do it a lot quicker than that.
I
BJ?
agree, and
Sorry.
there's some sections of the comprehensive plan that if you look at like an introduction,
Yep.
demographics, history, that does not involve a public process because demographics are demographics. So we've started to write some of the basic things that don't require public input. So that has begun, but then I want to make sure that we have enough time dedicated to it that when we get into the public process, that can be the focus of
Okay.
what we do.
So I think what Mel was talking about was getting a timeline together, putting priorities
Right.
together. When are we going to be focused on this? You've got a ton of things that were on your plate that hopefully now some have been relieved. And now what are you planning on doing? What's your plate look like for the next 6 months is I guess what I'm asking. So, okay.
Yeah, and that is exactly what I was asking. I just want to make sure that we put everything down on paper, see what is the most important, and prioritize it and timeline it. And with our administration, over the past few years becoming more stable, we have some consistency, policies. With that, I would like to see some sort of technological update where we start scanning things in for records retention and those kind of things, instead of just, papers that can disappear depending on who's working the office. So,
Well, what we have done with that is we now have a database for all code enforcement and all zoning permits that we started full-fledged at the beginning of the year. So every permit is put into, it's Excel at this point, but it's put in, everything is scanned, it's tied together, and then talking with the folks about the GIS, we have the ability, once we've established this, to take this and then put it onto the GIS mapping software that Nate's been working on, wherein you can click on any property and it will give you every permit, any variance, everything
Nice.
that was ever gone through the planning and zoning department on that. So we've been looking not only for a better record retention policy through scanning this, but ease of finding things, because now it's, if someone says I need a permit, it's happened in the last 5 years, it's going through a box and
Yeah.
doing that. So it's ease of use as well.
Suzanne, did you have any questions on this one?
No, this is very informative, very helpful.
BJ?
Just a couple of things that I want to mention. First of all, with the scanning, I know that with the technology we've purchased, that you guys are beginning to scan in files and do that and everything. And not just with that department, and I know this isn't development, but other departments, specifically, I'll reference the mayor's court, who has just recently scanned in years' worth of tickets that they've been able to get rid of, paid for out of mayor's court computer funds. So we're certainly trying to go as digital as we can with all that stuff, and it's a work in progress. We'll keep doing it. The second thing is about the comprehensive plan. I think that, the points that have been made are very valid, that, it was just kind of changed at times. It was just kind of thrown together. I think there were a lot of volunteers. I think there was a lot of effort put into it, but we're at a different time now in the city, and I think it's almost time to look at it, not essentially with what we have and see what we can change, but look at it from a fresh set of eyes and see what we need to do new for this, and not just say, hey, we have this down and it's, 75-foot setbacks. Well, that should be 65 now. No, what do we want for the city? And that's where we're starting to look at with the weather getting colder, things slowing down, and just blowing it up, starting anew, and where do we stand today with the city? And where do we want it to be? The perfect example is trails. And I believe we want trails in the city. I think trails are an important thing. Just that sort of looking at it from a fresh set of eyes, because right now as we're developing, we're on the verge of doing all of this. And the comprehensive plan we have in place right now, even if applied or just slightly modified, I don't think it's going to serve us well. So we'll be certainly working on that and making that a priority. If we can go back to the compensation agreements. Sorry I didn't have those with me. I forgot them in my stack. What I gave to you guys, I handed out, is an outline of several things. On the first page is an outline of how the current JED that we have in the Pataskala Corporate Park is set up and how it is distributed as far as the income tax. The numbers that the percentages are what are written into the agreements that you'll see throughout here. The dollar amounts are based on a mock $5 million payroll, just for a placekeeper and seeing what would be collected. So as we go down through these with the Pataskala JED in place, certainly the city collects the 1% income tax. We get that. It goes to our services, and it is just distributed between the police and streets, Debt service, as we know, the jet income tax rate's 1.75%. So if you start looking at a $5 million payroll, you can see here on the first page what that would generate. Go down through here what the joint distribution is and what the infrastructure fund gets 35% off the top, and the joint distribution of 65%, you can see down below where that is broken out. The point's been made about the schools not being members of the JED. There are considerations made, and I know that that's something we'll need to talk about. There are considerations made in the JED agreement for the schools as it relates to tax sharing agreements. If we can just walk through these, and I'll come back and make some points I want to make. The second page are the agreements that Licking Heights has with the city of New Albany. There are 3 agreements that they have. As you can see, compensation agreement 1, 2, and 3. What the school district is getting out of each one of these percentage-wise is different. Compensation agreement number 1, they're getting the most, and that's that AEP, big AEP development they have up there. That is the corporate office, whatever, that's generating a tremendous amount of income tax up there. They also have a community authority and the city that they collect amongst. But then as you go down to 2 and 3, they also have a Columbus Infrastructure Fund, which is similar to our county infrastructure fund that we have. Their infrastructure fund's getting smaller amounts than our county one does through the JED. But as you can see, roughly 27.5%, and that, or not roughly, but 27.5% and 22% are going to the schools. So if you break these down between the 3, I believe it's about 28% or so that Licking Heights is getting on average for these 3. The third page, if you look at, are the agreements that are in place with Southwest Licking School District and also Etna Township. If you look at the JED-Z improvements count, there's 20% coming off the top with it. 80% then is being split. That's collected at the 1.5% income tax rate that Reynoldsburg has. And you can see here the 2 that they have in place. I know we've heard before about different agreements they have, but these are the 2 that are in place with them. Southwest Licking School District on these are getting anywhere from 35 to 37.5%. And then there's the other parties in this. If you look at this, and if you start looking at, based on a $5 million payroll, that what would be collected based on these compensation agreements and what is shared. You look at Licking Heights, and if you just look at, I think number 1, the compensation agreement number 1 is kind of skewed only because of the amount of income tax that's collected with it. But if you look at number 2 and number 3, I would say that's more, that's similar to what our sort of payroll could potentially be. You're looking at 49.5 between the 2, so you're looking at about $24,000 based on a $5 million payroll that they would get in sharing per year. If you turn the next page, and if you look at Southwest Licking School District, what they're getting, it's slightly less, but it's $22,000 to $21,000, so it's very similar. So if you go to the page on the front page, as far as the Pataskala JED sharing, we are collecting $44,000 per year based on a $5 million payroll in the JED income tax. So if we want to start talking about being equal, being fair, being consistent with those others for competition's sake, and if somebody wants to go to Etna or wants to go up to New Albany, and we've got the school district saying, hey, not lobbying, we'd have to share about 50% roughly of our JED income tax. That would preserve our 1% though on this. And I think that's a very good starting point as we start talking about these, is trying to make them consistent with these other ones that they have. It's been a very good process to review these, look at these. Our JED agreement does make considerations if there is an income tax sharing agreement in place, that the schools could get consideration for 16% of the 65% that's distributed in. But that's not going to get us there as far as it's concerned with comparison to the others. So I feel comfortable talking about this in a way that, hey, 50% or so of our JED income tax, protecting our 1%, is a great place to start. So I think this is good information outlining this and seeing where our starting place would be. Happy to answer any questions.
BJ, I went back and grabbed the actual agreements. I know this is just an evaluation of the tax dollars, just the the money itself.
Correct.
Did you look at any more of these agreements as far as the pieces and parts to it?
Yes.
Like the requirement to retain real property in the school district?
Yes.
I don't think ours has that in there.
It doesn't, and there's other provisions in there as far as it relates to our 1%, so.
So
I
those
certainly
are also
looked at all
very
those.
important
Yes.
pieces to this. I appreciate looking at the money, and I was going to ask the question, Jamie just left, but I was going to ask the question, have we gone any further with our evaluation? I'm not going to call it dueling evaluations, but, you know, the Southwest Licking did an evaluation at $5 million or whatever. We did an evaluation. They are completely different because I don't think they're apples and apples.
Well, that
Something else.
evaluation was based on the property tax.
That's correct.
what you're talking about.
So what I guess I'm asking is we need to move this thing forward and obviously get these agreements moving. And, you know, I think one of the issues that we need to come to terms on is what is included and what isn't.
Right.
And what's fair and what's not fair. I
didn't-
think that's where you're looking at for the
Right.
money portions.
Right. The money portions, the other ones are pretty, I don't want to say boilerplate. If you start looking at these agreements across the board, there's things that are very consistent. If you look at the one that is proposed and tabled with us, there's a lot of things that are consistent with the ones not that we have, that New Albany has with Licking Heights. They're very consistent. Some of those
Okay.
boilerplate things.
Okay. I'm just worried about the detail side of it. You know, there are requirements and restrictions within these
That's what I'm
that
referring
aren't,
to.
that aren't in ours, that we need to just make sure, while we're looking at the money and making sure the money is handled fairly and equitably, I think
Yes.
there's also some of these other details that we want to make sure the school district is agreeing to as well.
Oh, I agree.
Okay.
I agree. And those are things that will be worked out, certainly, in those specifics. If you look at, and I think what you're probably referring to are the Southwest Licking ones, because they're more involved, but, you know, Southwest Licking has a bunch of different, not only compensation agreements, but also tax abatement agreements that I think you may be referring to the tax abatement instead of the compensation agreement.
Okay, well, whichever they are.
Yeah.
We need to look at both of them
I agree.
for these guys.
Yep.
All right, very good.
So. The last thing we want to cover is just an update of the AEP development, and I'll let me go ahead and kick that off, I'm sorry. First thing I want to say is, as far as the abatements, the enterprise zone abatement has all been signed, it's been applied or submitted to the state. So it is currently going through the state process, everybody had a chance to sign it. Compensation agreement that was agreed to, the city has signed it, AEP has signed it, Southwest Licking has signed it, and it's currently with Licking Heights School District to sign. I don't know if by the end of this week, due to the holiday, we'll have that, but certainly early next week, and that'll be ready to go. Scott can go ahead and fill you in on the status of the actual development and the approvals they've received through our different boards and commissions.
Thank you, BJ. So the original site plan that they submitted for review from everyone is attached to the form that says AEP project update. On that, it shows an approximately 80,000 square foot warehouse and also an office building that was going to be separate. Due to the location, they were trying to place the office, wherever they put it, it was either an easement or it wouldn't work, so they said we'll incorporate that into the warehouse. So there will be no office building, the office will be incorporated to the warehouse. Also, the gravel laydown yard in the back is approximately 56 acres that will be fenced in. So far, they have received all necessary approvals through the city's attachments. They went to the Planning and Zoning Commission on November 2nd to get approval for their planned manufacturing site plan district. Also, they received a variance or two variances on November 8th. One for parking, because as it was required for code, they needed, I think, 50-some parking spaces, but the maximum employees would be 20. So they were over parked, so they reduced that. Screening will only occur along the Etna Parkway. And then they also needed a variance for a 6-foot fence with barbed wire to be located in the front yard. So they received variances for all those. So the next steps, they would need to submit revised site plans based upon the conditions of approval from the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. They'd also need to submit stormwater calculations to the city engineer and the public service director for review and approval. And once they have done that, they could apply for a zoning permit that would be approved by the Planning and Zoning Department. and that would be their steps through the city. Once they get the zoning permit, they could take that to the Licking County Building Department to get building permits and things of that nature. So that's kind of where we are in that process, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Is there any timeframe to where they'll break ground? I mean, what are we looking at?
I have heard they have talked about trying to break ground by the end of the year. It's a little aggressive, I think, because they're trying to look at, they have not yet done stormwater calculations, and once they do stormwater calculations, that will look about how they're going to handle the stormwater on the property, and they've come up with a few different concepts. So on some of that, there's a lot they need to accomplish, so I think by the end of the year might be a little aggressive, but it's, at this point, it's kind of up to them.
Okay. Andy?
A couple different questions. It shows a drainage easement running through the middle of their site. How do they plan on dealing with that?
That is something that will come with the stormwater calculations, and we've also identified that, and part of the condition of approval is they will have to work that out with the city engineer and public service director to determine how they're going to make sure that that functions as intended. That it's not going to create any issues with water going from A to B.
They won't receive approval for any of their engineering plans till that's addressed.
Okay. And I assume you're going to look for some kind of environmental requirements on that, see if there's any issues with this is it a blue line stream, or what is it exactly?
I have no idea what a blue line stream is.
From our review,
sorry.
this went to the city engineer, so they said we're gonna need to work on this. Basically, it's a varying width drainage easement owned by the city of Pataskala, and we've been looking to see what we can find on that drainage easement. So I don't think it's a stream, but it's definitely there, and it's definitely gonna have to be addressed to the satisfaction of the city
Yeah,
engineer.
the issues are, is there mitigation required for it? To pipe that, they may be looking at mitigation.
Yeah, I think if there was a requirement to pipe it, they'd be looking at mitigation, but that'll all be shaken out with the engineering plans.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there a difference between when you see fence, I see fence in multiple locations. Is it all the same type of fence?
Yes, it would be 6 foot with 2 feet of barbed wire.
And 6 foot, does it have screening mesh in it, or is it just a chain link?
It's just a chain link.
There are screening requirements based on,
The screening
Okay, though.
requirements were waived for the north, west, and south sides of the property due to security concerns, so that went to BZA to waive that. They are doing all of the screening along Etna Parkway, which is a 4-foot mound with a minimum of 4-foot evergreen shrub or tree on top of that, so it'll be 8 foot of screening along the front.
Okay. Okay, I'll just keep going. Substation location, do they have that identified?
We received applications for lot splits today. That will be further south, kind of where the road, if you come down Etna Parkway and it starts to bend around to go through the slim part before you get to Etna Township, it'll be just north of the slim part.
So
We
it's,
don't know that for sure, but one could deduce that from the lot split application that we got today, that's where it'll be.
it's not shown on that current map.
It won't be at this location.
and nor does it look like it's on this 80 acres then?
It is not.
That's different than what I understood. So this is a totally separate parcel from this.
Correct.
Correct.
Interesting.
Okay.
Further questions?
Yep.
Okay.
Setback requirements, they're building setback requirements from Etna Parkway. What do you know offhand what their setback requirements are?
Offhand, no, but I know when we looked at it, they met all the requirements.
Because the building looks like it's 150 feet. If that is a 150-foot power easement, well, I can't tell. I guess I don't know how wide that easement is.
If they didn't meet the setbacks, they would have had to get a variance for it, which is not one of the variances they pursued.
Okay. And these setbacks would have been established by
The
what?
Plain Manufacturing District.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. So the Plain Manufacturing District is in place. It establishes setbacks. This is meeting it because they did not seek a variance for it, so therefore they're meeting the setbacks.
Okay. Scott, I hope that you're prepared to give all those technical details to the whole of council later, during your report,
Yes, we will.
because I don't know what Blue Stream or, Wi-Fi or whatever it was.
It's a monitored stream, is all it means. It's a map stream.
All right. Is there any other business that we need to discuss?
Nothing further from us.
Okay. Then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I'll motion.
Motion second. All right, Kathy, can you take the call? Roll call, please.
Carter,
Yes.
Oh, she'll
Walter?
take a motion. Got it.
Walter,
Yes?
Hayes.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned.
I thought she was giving a motion. I was just shooting straight for a second.